The courtroom was silent in the way silence feels heavy, like the air itself is holding its breath. Wooden benches creaked softly as people shifted, unaware that in the very next moment, everything they believed about truth, innocence, and loyalty was about to change forever. At the center of the room sat a little girl, barely 7 years old, her feet not even touching the floor, her small hand resting calmly on the table. Beside her sat a large German shepherd, alert but unusually still. And when the girl slowly lifted her finger and made a small, almost invisible signal, the judge suddenly raised his hand and stopped the entire courtroom in shock. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of doing what's right even when the world feels unfair, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them most. The little girl's name was Emily Carter, and she had learned very early in life that being small did not mean being powerless. Her world had not been filled with toys, laughter, or bedtime stories the way other children's worlds were. Instead, her days had been shaped by long hours of waiting, watching adults argue in hushed voices, and learning to read emotions before she could even read books. Emily lived with her mother in a small apartment that always felt temporary, as if they were never meant to stay anywhere for long. Her father had disappeared from her life years ago, leaving behind questions no one ever answered. The one constant in Emily's life, the one presence that never changed, was Max, her dog. Max was not just a pet. He was a trained service dog who had once worked with search and rescue teams before an injury ended his official career. When Emily's mother adopted him, they had both been broken in different ways. Over time, Max became Emily's shadow, her protector, and her silent listener. He slept beside her bed every night, followed her from room to room, and seemed to understand her thoughts before she ever expressed them. Emily learned quickly that Max responded not just to words, but to subtle movements, small gestures, and signals that no one else noticed. It became their secret language, born from trust and necessity. The day they entered the courtroom was the day Emily's entire future was on the line. Her mother stood accused of a serious crime she insisted she did not commit. The evidence against her looked convincing on paper, and the prosecution painted a picture of guilt that was hard to ignore. Emily had been placed temporarily in foster care while the trial unfolded, and Max, after much legal debate, had been allowed to stay with her as emotional support. For Emily, that small mercy meant everything. Without Max, the world felt too loud, too sharp, too frightening. The courtroom itself felt enormous to her, with tall wooden walls, bright lights, and rows of strangers watching her every move. Adults in dark suits spoke in confident voices, discussing events and timelines that made little sense to a child. Emily did not understand legal language or courtroom rules, but she understood fear. She understood the look on her mother's face when she was escorted into the room each day, trying to smile but failing. Emily also understood something else, something no one else seemed to notice. She remembered a night, a moment everyone kept describing incorrectly. That night had been raining heavily. Emily remembered because Max had been restless, pacing near the door, his ears alert. She remembered her mother being home with her the entire evening, cooking a simple meal, helping with homework, and tucking her into bed. Emily remembered the sound of sirens far away, not close, not near their building. Yet the prosecution insisted her mother had been somewhere else entirely at the exact same time. Witnesses claimed they had seen her. Security footage was blurry but suggestive. To the adults in the room, it was enough. To Emily, it was all wrong. As the trial went on, Emily grew quieter. She sat through hours of testimony, her small fingers gripping the edge of the table, Max pressed firmly against her side. Her eyes followed every movement, every expression. She noticed the way certain witnesses avoided eye contact. She noticed how one man's hands shook whenever he spoke. But most of all, she noticed how Max reacted during specific moments. When certain names were mentioned, Max's ears twitched. When certain timelines were described, he stiffened. Emily had learned to trust Max's instincts long before she trusted adults. The turning point came unexpectedly, during what everyone assumed would be just another routine moment in the trial. A key witness was recounting his version of events, confident and detailed, describing seeing Emily's mother near the scene of the crime. The courtroom listened intently. The judge watched carefully. The lawyers took notes. Emily felt her chest tighten as she realized this testimony was pushing everything closer to a terrible ending. Her heart pounded as she looked down at Max. His posture had changed. His body was tense, his gaze fixed, not aggressive, but alert in a way Emily recognized immediately. Without thinking, without fully understanding the weight of what she was about to do, Emily lifted her hand and made a small, deliberate signal with her finger. It was a signal she had used many times before, usually during moments of fear or danger. To anyone else, it looked like a child fidgeting. To Max, it was a clear command. Max reacted instantly. He rose from his seated position and let out a sharp, controlled bark that echoed through the courtroom, breaking the carefully maintained order. Gasps filled the room. The judge immediately raised his hand, calling for silence, his expression shifting from authority to confusion. Max did not bark again. Instead, he turned his head and stared directly at the witness, unmoving, his body rigid with focus. The courtroom froze. The judge, startled but experienced enough to recognize unusual behavior, ordered a brief pause. Security moved forward cautiously, but the judge stopped them. There was something about the dog's behavior that didn't feel random. Max was not aggressive. He was not out of control. He was alert, precise, and intentional. As the pause stretched on, the judge asked for an explanation. Emily, overwhelmed but determined, did something no one expected. She stood up on her chair, her voice small but steady, and explained in simple terms that Max only reacted like that when he sensed danger or dishonesty. She explained that Max had been trained to respond to stress signals, changes in heart rate, and nervous behavior. She explained that he had done the same thing before, on nights when strangers approached their apartment or when something was wrong. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs. The lawyers exchanged looks. The judge, clearly conflicted but intrigued, ordered a deeper examination. The witness was asked to step down temporarily. The court allowed a brief evaluation of Max by a certified handler who happened to be present in the building. The handler confirmed that Max's reaction was not typical excitement or fear, but a trained alert response. That single moment cracked the case wide open. Further questioning revealed inconsistencies in the witness's testimony. Timelines no longer matched. Under pressure, the witness began to unravel. It was eventually revealed that he had been coerced into testifying falsely in exchange for leniency in an unrelated matter. The evidence that once seemed solid began to fall apart piece by piece. Emily watched silently as the adults scrambled, their confidence shaken. She did not fully understand the legal consequences unfolding, but she understood the shift in energy. She felt hope returning, fragile but real. Max sat back down beside her, calm once more, his job done. By the end of the day, the charges against Emily's mother were dismissed due to lack of credible evidence. The judge addressed the courtroom with a rare softness, acknowledging that truth sometimes arrives in unexpected forms. Emily ran into her mother's arms, the weight of fear lifting from both of them at once. Max stood beside them, tail wagging gently, a quiet hero in a world that almost failed them. As they left the courtroom, people watched them differently. Not with suspicion or judgment, but with awe. A little girl, a loyal dog, and a bond strong enough to stop a courtroom and change a why that seemed sealed. Before this story ends, if this moment of courage, loyalty, and quiet strength has touched your heart, please take a second to like this video, share it with someone who believes in justice, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement helps keep stories like this alive. And please, before the final moments fade, comment below with a single word that describes how this story made you feel. Your words matter more than you know. Emily would grow older, and life would continue to test her in new ways, but she would always remember the day she learned that even the smallest voice, when guided by truth and love, can stop the world. Max would grow older too, his muzzle slowly turning gray, but his place beside Emily would never change. Together, they proved that sometimes, justice doesn't come from loud arguments or powerful positions. Sometimes, it comes from a quiet signal, a loyal heart, and the courage to believe in what you know is right.